The whisper of dawn was dying, a fact not lost on scholar Kalen of the Ethel as he floated before the main observation pane, his slender, silver-blue fingers pressed against the cool, crystal surface. Outside, the serene tapestry of stars was being methodically unpicked. The Locus, a species of chilling geometric efficiency, were doing the unpicking. Their warships were not ships as the Ethel understood them. They were stark, black polyhedrons, tetrahedrons, dodecahedrons, irregular monoliths that moved in silence, violating physics with silent jumps that frayed local spacetime. They did not broadcast threats, negotiate, or even communicate. They simply arrived, targeted a world's infrastructure, and reduced it to elemental particles and perfect, sterile geometric patterns etched into the planetary crust. Artistry in annihilation. The Ethel homeworld, Illyria, a planet of gentle amber skies, crystalline forests, and cities that sang with harmonic architecture, was now a scarred marble. The Locus had bypassed the Ethel fleet, a fleet designed for aesthetic patrol and philosophical debate, not war, in 7 standard cycles. The Whisper of Dawn, a deep-range cultural survey vessel, had been at the galactic rim, cataloging neutrino echoes from dead stars. It was all that remained of the Ethel's presence among the stars. "Scholar," a soft, melodic voice chimed. It was Pilot Lyra, her large, luminous eyes dimmed with grief. "The last pulse from the Illyrian resonance core. It has ceased." The resonance core was the heart of their global consciousness, a gentle network of shared emotion and tranquil thought. Its silence was a psychic amputation. Kalen closed his secondary eyelids, a membrane of fine silver against the wave of communal sorrow. "The Locusts do not leave survivors," he stated, his voice a whisper of wind chimes. "They will trace our jump signature. They will complete the pattern." "Where can we go? The galactic concordance is in disarray. The Locusts are consuming member species one by one. No one has successfully resisted." A data stream flickered on Kalen's console, an automated beacon from the Concordance's emergency network updated centuries ago. It was a map of known space with designations for thousands of species. His gaze fell on a remote yellow star on the Orion Spur, a backwater arm of the galaxy. The designation was simple, archaic, Sol III, species, Homo sapiens, status, pre-concordance, quarantined. The quarantine note was extensive, compiled by long-dead concordance observers. Technologically adolescent, species divisive, biosphere damaging. Demonstrates exceptional capacity for interspecies violence, territorialism, and resource exploitation. Neurological profile indicates high volatility, short-term strategic thinking, and a pervasive predator-prey cognitive framework. Recommend indefinite observation, absolute non-intervention. Potential risk, extreme. It was the worst species review Kalen had ever seen. A society of savages, trapped on their own violent cradle. Yet, the quarantine also meant the Locust likely had no record of them. They were beneath notice. "There," Kalen said, pointing a trembling finger at the blinking, warning yellow dot. "Sol III, a world called Earth." Lyra's frill, a delicate crest behind her head, flared in alarm. "The quarantine. The risk assessment is catastrophic, Kalen. They are described as monsters." "What are monsters to a geometric plague?" Kalen replied, a rare, sharp edge in his tone. "The Locusts are order devoid of life. These humans are chaos brimming with it. We do not need their virtue, Lyra. We need their chaos. We need a place the Locusts would never think to look. A briar patch so thick and thorny, even a perfect geometric mind might hesitate." The decision was one of utter, soul-crushing desperation. They plotted the jump, pouring the last of their refined starlight fuel into the drives. As the Whisper of Dawn folded space, Kalen looked back at the fatting stars of his home sector, now forever silent. He was leading his last people into the jaws of what the galaxy considered its most terrifying species. It felt less like a refuge and more like choosing the type of poison. The arrival in the Sol system was jarring. The noise was the first thing, a cacophony of electromagnetic chatter that plastered across their sensors. Radio waves, television broadcasts, military radar, civilian satellite traffic, a roaring, messy, glorious din of communication. It was the sound of a species that could not stop talking, shouting, singing, and arguing. To the ethel, whose communications were like structured symphonies, it was a headache given wavelength. Then there was the visual clutter. Orbital space was a junkyard of active satellites, derelict probes, and the glittering, angular shape of an international space station. The planet itself was a riot of blue, green, brown, and swathes of ugly gray urban sprawl. It was vibrant, wounded, and teeming. "They've detected us," Lyra reported, her voice tight. "Multiple primitive targeting systems are attempting acquisition. Radio signals are being directed at us. The languages, there are thousands. Broadcast the Universal Concordance greeting packet on all frequencies," Kalen ordered. "Peace, kinship, the standard protocols." The packet contained mathematical primes, basic chemical formulas, and images of ethel with hands open, frills calm. The response was not unified. A dozen different nations responded in a dozen different ways. A welcome from a collective called the United Nations. A terse military challenge from something called NORAD. A burst of frantic code from amateur radio enthusiasts. And a tidal wave of digital noise from the planet's global network. Social media platforms exploding with blurry telescope images, wild theories, and panicked or euphoric reactions. First contact with humanity was not a single event. It was a billion events happening simultaneously, contradicting each other. It was chaos. It took 3 of Earth's days for a coherent channel to be established. The vessel was directed to a geosynchronous orbit over the neutral territory of the Pacific. A single, relatively advanced spacecraft, a joint venture of several space agencies, approached. It was blocky, utilitarian, fueled by primitive but efficient chemical rockets. The face that appeared on Kalen's screen was of a female human, Dr. Aris Thorne, an astrobiologist and linguist tapped by the UN. She had brown skin, lines of stress and wonder around her eyes, and spoke in carefully practiced concordance standard. "On behalf of the people of Earth, we welcome you, Whisper of Dawn. We have received your distress signal and your situation report regarding the Locus. Our condolences for your loss." Her words were perfect, but her eyes held a storm of emotions. Awe, fear, profound curiosity, and a calculating sharpness Kalen found unsettling. "We thank you." "Dr. Thorne," Kalen responded, his frill modulating to convey gratitude and sorrow. "Our need is dire. We are the last. The Locus are a galactic extinction event. They will not stop, and in time they will map this star. You are not ready." Aris Thorne listened, her expression grave. "Your assessment of our technological capability is correct. We are infants compared to the civilizations you describe. Our world is divided. Presenting a unified front, as your concordance did, may be impossible." "We do not ask for a front," Kalen said. "We ask for sanctuary, a place to hide, to wait, perhaps to hope your unique development path might yield insights the concordance's peaceful logic did not." The phrase unique development path made Aris's mouth quirk in a strange, human expression, not quite a smile. "We have a saying," she said. "Desperate times call for desperate measures. Your request for sanctuary will be put before our United Nations Security Council. The debate will be lively." Lively was an understatement. The global debate that followed was transmitted in part to the Whisper of Dawn. Kalen and his crew watched, aghast, as human factions argued with a ferocity that bordered on self-immolation. Some pleaded for compassion, for embracing galactic brotherhood. Others shrieked about an alien trick, a precursor to invasion. Military hawks saw an opportunity to reverse-engineer ethel technology. Corporations salivated over extraterrestrial intellectual property. Conspiracy theorists had a field day. Nations postured, threatened, and made backroom deals. It was a spectacle of stunning, short-sighted stupidity. And yet, through the chaos, a decision was made. A fragile coalition led by the major powers offered the Ethel a restricted sanctuary, a barren island chain in the South Pacific, heavily monitored with strictly controlled technology exchanges. The price was high: full access to Ethel's scientific knowledge, particularly their gravity manipulation and energy systems. "They are vultures," Lyra wept, her chime-like voice discordant. "They pick at our bones before we are even cold." "They are survivors," Kalen corrected, though his soul ached. "They see a resource. We must be that resource. It is our only leverage." The Ethel landed. They were housed in a facility built with shocking speed, a mix of their own graceful, grown biotech and harsh, human prefabricated units. They were studied, interviewed, and analyzed by a rotating circus of scientists, soldiers, and politicians. The humans were fascinated by Ethel biology, their peaceful psychology, their art. They were equally baffled and disdainful of their lack of military science. Kalen worked closely with Aris Thorne and a military liaison, General Marcos Stavros, a grizzled man with eyes like granite chips. Stavros asked blunt, uncomfortable questions about the Locus. "You say they don't communicate. What's their attack pattern? Not philosophy, tactics, weak points." "There are no weak points, General," Kalen explained patiently. "A tetrahedron attacks, you destroy it. Its constituent parts reform into two smaller tetrahedrons. You destroy those, they become four. They learn, adapt, and reshape. They are a thought given form. You cannot kill a thought with a bullet." "Everything dies if you hit it hard enough in the right place," Stavros grunted, studying the holographic records of Illyria's destruction. The perfect geometric scars on the planet's surface made him scowl. "It's just engineering." Kalen saw the profound disconnect. The Ethel and the Concordance saw the Locus as a metaphysical calamity. The humans saw a puzzle, a broken system to be hacked, a fortification to be breached. They lacked the wisdom to understand the scale of the threat, but they possessed a frightening, pragmatic ruthlessness the Ethel had never needed to evolve. Weeks turned to months. The humans made startling leaps with Ethel science, but always towards application. Stronger materials, better engines, more efficient power grids for their cities. They showed little interest in harmonic consciousness or stellar meditation. Kalen began to despair. Humanity was using the Ethel's funeral shroud to weave a better blanket while ignoring the blizzard outside. Then the signal was detected. A deep space monitoring array, upgraded with Ethel sensor tech, picked up the signature. A quantum spacetime shear propagating from the direction of the galactic core. It was faint, still years away at sublight, but its profile was unmistakable. The Locus were methodically scanning spiral arms. It was only a matter of time before their perfect, silent gaze fell upon the noisy beacon of Sol. Panic this time was more controlled. The global news was a tide of dread. The great alien threat was no longer an abstract story. It was an incoming tide, measured in light years. The human reaction was not unified despair, but a frenetic global mobilization. It was ugly, brutal, and breathtakingly fast. Nations that had been at each other's digital throats began sharing data, selectively, distrustfully, but they shared. Military budgets skyrocketed. The International Space Alliance, once a toothless forum, was given emergency powers. A project buried in secrecy was fast-tracked. Kalen heard whispers of it, Project Janus. He was summoned to a secure briefing deep under the Alps with Aris and Stavros. The room was cold, lit by holoscreens. "We've analyzed your data on the Locus for 6 months, Stavros began, no nonsense. "Your concordance made a critical error. They fought a war of ideals against a weapon. You tried to reason with an algorithm designed for erasure." "What would you have done?" Kalen asked, weary. "What we've always done," Stavros said. "We weaponized your principles." He brought up a schematic. It showed a network of thousands of devices, based on Ethel harmonic resonance technology but perverted. The Locus reshape matter and energy based on perfect geometric templates. They are, in essence, a universal compiler, reading reality and overwriting it with their code. Eris took over, her voice clinical. Your people use harmonic resonance for communication and healing, to gently align disparate frequencies. We've scaled it. Project Janus is a planetary-scale resonant cannon. It doesn't fire particles or energy. It fires a coherent, targeted idea. Kalen's frill lay flat against his skull in horror. An idea. A corrupted geometric axiom, Eris said, pointing to swirling, non-Euclidean fractal patterns on the screen. An impossible shape, a paradoxical equation. We will broadcast a resonant meme, a cognitive virus based on irrationality, inconsistency, chaos. The very antithesis of the Locus's perfect logic. We will not attack their ships. We will attack the concept that holds them together. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was a weapon the peaceful Ethel could never have conceived. Born from a mind evolved in constant conflict, deception, and ideological warfare. It was a weapon designed not to destroy a body, but to infect a mind, even if that mind was artificial. You are creating a psychic plague, Kalen whispered. We're fighting fire with a worse fire, Stavros corrected. The Locus want to impose perfect, silent order. We will hit them with a scream of pure, mathematical madness. Let's see their perfect shapes handle a Möbius strip of contradictions. The construction was a global effort, hidden in plain sight. Components were manufactured on every continent. The cannon itself was not a cannon but a distributed array across the moon's far side, powered by fleets of fusion reactors built with Ethel designs. Humanity, faced with extinction, had shed its divisions in a wave of focused, pragmatic terror. They were not united in love, but in a shared will to survive, and that will was a hammer. The Ethel watched, participants and prisoners. They provided the foundational science, but the monstrous application was purely human. Lyra became despondent. We have brought a cancer to this world, and now they have made it into a weapon. We are corruptors. Kalen wasn't sure. He saw the fear in human eyes, yes, but he also saw the fierce protectiveness for their messy, flawed, beautiful world. He saw parents working triple shifts on Janus components, not for glory but for a future for their children. He saw rival scientists from hostile nations sharing breakthroughs without credit. It was not the harmony of the Ethel. It was a temporary, desperate symphony of dissonance, all aimed at a single, crashing note. The day the Locus vanguard arrived, it was not with fanfare. One moment, space near Neptune was empty. The next, 3 black tetrahedrons hung there, each the size of a small moon. They did not hail. They began scanning, their sensors like cold fingers probing the solar system. On Earth, the chaos of first contact was gone. A grim, global silence fell. The order was given. Project Janus activated. There was no beam of light, no explosion. To ordinary sensors, nothing happened. But to the Ethel's refined harmonic senses, and to the Locus's own perceptual framework, the universe screamed. From the moon, a wave of carefully crafted nonsense propagated. It was Gödel's incompleteness theorem set to a frequency that shattered crystal. It was a visual of an Escher painting translated into a quantum state. It was a logical paradox given the force of a physical law. The lead tetrahedron simply stuttered, its perfect edges blurred. It attempted to parse the incoming data to compile the chaotic resonance signal into its perfect geometric understanding of reality. It could not. The internal contradiction propagated. The tetrahedron twisted in on itself, its geometry becoming chaotic, then fluid, then a swirling cloud of disassociated particles that failed to reconstitute. It didn't explode, it unthought itself. The other 2 tetrahedrons reacted. They shifted, attempting to counter-resonate to correct the error. Janus shifted frequency, broadcasting a new meme, a viral concept of infinite recursion. One tetrahedron froze, trapped in a logical loop, vibrating itself into atomic dispersal. The third managed to fire a beam of nullifying energy, a eraser of complexity that wiped out a Janus node on the lunar surface, killing 10,000 human technicians in a microsecond. Humanity did not flinch. They brought secondary arrays online. They fired a third concept, the idea of forgetting, of a shape that could not remember its own vertices. The final Locus construct dissolved into a harmless, inert dust of carbon and iron, drifting where a perfect weapon of war had been. The silence that followed was deeper than space. On Earth there were no cheers. There was a stunned global exhalation. Then the reports began: casualties, system damage, the cost. It was a victory, but it tasted like ashes and ozone. In the command bunker, Stavros watched the sensor feeds, his face unreadable. Aris sat heavily, her hands shaking. Kalen floated, feeling the echo of the psychic scream fatting. The Locus were not invincible. They had a weakness, an allergy to chaos, to irrationality, to the messy, creative, contradictory noise of a thinking mind that refused to be reduced to a pattern. And humanity had just weaponized its own deepest, most dangerous nature. The reprieve was short. Deep space sensors, now hypersensitive, picked up the response. Not more tetrahedrons. A single massive shape, a dodecahedron the size of a planet making its way towards Sol. It was the source, the compiler, the Locus mind. The message it broadcast was its first and only communication, a pulse of pure data that translated across all systems. Source of corruption identified. Paradoxical entity, Sol-II, quarantine assessment, inaccurate, threat level prime, direct annihilation protocol engaged, purging. Humanity had won a battle. They had also painted the biggest target in the galaxy on their own planet. The next phase was not about a single weapon. It was about survival. And as the Human War Councils reconvened, the tone had changed. The fear was still there, but beneath it was a cold, terrifying certainty, a predator's certainty. Kalen was invited to a new council, a shadowy group that operated above the UN, comprised of Stavros, Aris, and a few others whose names were never spoken. The room was dark. "They're coming for all of us now," Stavros said. "Because of what we did, because of what we are." "We did what was necessary," Aris replied, but her eyes were on Kalen, as if seeking absolution he could not give. "Necessity is just the mother of invention," said a new voice, a woman from a nation historically skilled in asymmetric warfare. "We've shown we can hurt them. Now we need to show them that hurting us is the most expensive mistake a perfect mind can make." The plans they discussed made Project Janus look like a firecracker. They spoke of mining the asteroid belt with reality-distorting mines based on corrupted Locus code harvested from the debris. They discussed creating ghost fleets of drones broadcasting suicidal paradoxes on ramming trajectories. They theorized about hacking the Locus's own geometric perception, tricking it into seeing threats where none existed, until it turned its purging beams on itself. It was a strategy of total, relentless, intellectual guerrilla warfare. It embraced deception, trickery, traps, and psychological operations on a cosmic scale. It was dirty, dishonorable, and utterly, perfectly human. Kalen listened, and finally he understood the old Concordance quarantine report. It was not that humanity was inherently evil. They were capable of great compassion, as shown to the Ethel in their own rough way. They were capable of art, science, love. But they were also the species that, when backed into a corner, would not just fight to live. They would fight to make the corner itself a weapon. They would study the rules of the universe not just to understand them, but to find the loopholes, the exploits, the cracks. Their greatest evolutionary advantage wasn't intelligence, it was cunning. A ruthless, adaptive, devious cunning that could turn any principle, even the principle of peace the Ethel brought, into a tool for survival, and failing survival into a tool for vengeance. As he left the council, the weight of revelation settled on him. The Ethel had not brought salvation to Earth. They had brought the match, and they had lit it next to a powder keg the galaxy had wisely sealed away. The Locus mind, a perfect, silent god of order, was coming. and it was coming to exterminate the only species in the Milky Way that had ever looked upon the divine, perfect geometry of annihilation and thought not to pray, but to poke it in the eye. The galaxy was about to learn why the humans of Sol III had been quarantined, not because they were weak, not because they were evil, but because, when faced with an uncaring universe, they were the most dangerous thing imaginable, a problem that refused to be solved, and they were about to teach that lesson to gods. The arrival of the Locus mind was not an event witnessed with eyes or sensors. It was a pressure, a silent, geometric weight that settled over the Sol system, compressing space, bending light into unnaturally straight lines, and silencing the constant electromagnetic chatter of humanity with a blanket of perfect, dead order. The dodecahedron did not emerge from a jump. It simply was, occupying the space between Mars and Jupiter, its scale so vast it occluded stars, its black facets drinking the sunlight and offering nothing in return. It made no move, emitted no signal beyond that first, chilling declaration. It just existed, a perfect, silent indictment. On Earth, the silence was the most terrifying part. Radios emitted only static. Television screens showed fractal snow that slowly resolved into repeating, hypnotic geometric patterns before going black. Digital networks, the roaring river of human consciousness, flatlined. Only hardened, isolated systems, military landlines, buried cables, the ethel's harmonic tech, remained. Humanity was plunged into a sensory deprivation tank of its own solar system. In the Alpine bunker, the silence was broken by the hum of generators and the low, tense voices of the Shadow Council. "It's a siege engine," Stavros said, staring at the holographic representation of the mind. Data was scanned. Scanners bounced off, returned nonsense, or simply failed. "It's not attacking. It's recoding the local laws of physics. Look at the readings from the outer probes." Kalen studied the data. The quantum foam around the mind was smoothing out. Entropy was decreasing. Random atomic motion was becoming more uniform. It was imposing a regime of perfect, sterile predictability. "It is not here to fight your fleet," Kalen said, his voice a faint chime in the heavy air. "It is here to unmake the conditions that allowed you to exist, to make reality itself hostile to life." "A philosophical attack," Aris murmured. "It's turning our universe into its universe. No chaos, no randomness, no free will, just pure, cold geometry." "Then we hit it before the process completes," said General Yi from the Eastern Coalition. "Every Janus array, every missile, every ship, a full-scale assault. Overwhelm it." "The Vanguard tetrahedrons adapted to individual attacks," cautioned Dr. Vega, the lead physicist for Project Janus. "This is the source. It will have defenses we cannot imagine. A direct assault might be exactly what it expects, a predictable geometric response." Stavros rubbed his jaw, the sound of stubble loud in the quiet room. "It expects order. It expects a logical military escalation. So we give it disorder. We give it nonsense on every level all at once." The plan, dubbed Operation Maelstrom, was a testament to human desperation and fractured unity. There would be no single command. Instead, a decentralized, near-chaotic protocol was activated. Every remaining nation, every military branch, every independent station and ship captain received a package of Janus-derived weaponized memes, the paradoxical concepts, and a simple order: deploy at will. Target, the central anomaly. Vary timing, vector, and payload. No coordination. It was a strategy born of understanding their own weakness. Humanity could not outlogic the Locus, so they would drown it in noise. The first salvo was not fired from the moon. It came from a derelict Martian survey probe hijacked by a Finnish coding collective. It broadcast a simple, endless loop, the digitized sound of a human heartbeat out of sync with itself. A biological rhythm, messy and inconsistent. The dodecahedron ignored it. Then a Chinese stealth missile, coated in sensor-absorbent material, detonated 50 kilometers from a facet. It released not explosives, but but a cloud of nanites programmed to assemble and disassemble random, useless shapes, a Picasso sketch given atomic form. A flicker, a minute distortion in the perfect black surface, like a ripple on oil. The nanites were disintegrated, but the ripple remained for a full second. It was a vulnerability, an irritation. The storm began in earnest. American stealth ships fired salvos of logic bombs, data packets containing insoluble puzzles and paradoxical commands. Russian platforms unleashed crude but powerful electromagnetic pulses tuned to Janus frequencies, creating waves of harmonic static. The European-Asian alliance fired kinetic rods from Ceres, each rod inscribed with fractal patterns designed to confuse targeting systems. The space around the dodecahedron became a hellscape of contradictory energies. It was not a battle of force, but of concept. The mind began to react. Its surface shimmered, facets shifting. Defensive measures emerged. Beams of ordered light that erased chaos, localized gravity wells that crushed incoming projectiles, and waves of null particles that sought to reset disordered space. But humanity kept changing the tune. A Brazilian orbital samba school, repurposed as a military asset, broadcast a complex, syncopated rhythm across the spectrum. A collective of online gamers, networked into a military satellite, launched a swarm of microdrones that flew in intentionally stupid, unpredictable patterns, like gnats around a statue. The Locus mind was a supercomputer designed to solve the universe. Humanity was presenting it with 10 billion meaningless browser tabs, all flashing and playing annoying MIDI music, while simultaneously hitting the keyboard with a hammer. On the whisper of dawn hovering behind the moon, Kalen watched the sensor feeds. He saw the majestic, terrible order of the mind and the seething, frenetic, stupidly brave disorder flung against it. He felt a profound, species-deep shame. The Ethel had sought harmony. They had brought this beautiful, terrible knowledge to these apes, and the apes had used it to make the galaxy's most sophisticated nuisance. And it was working. The dodecahedron's surface was no longer perfectly still. Geometric patterns flared and died across it, like a mind trying to corral a million competing thoughts. Its process of rewriting local physics had stalled, then reversed in patches. Reality was becoming messy again around it. "It's frustrated," Lyra observed, her voice a mix of awe and terror. "It doesn't feel emotion, but its processing is becoming inefficient. It is wasting energy on countering trivialities." "That's the point," Kalen said softly. "To be trivial, to be beneath its notice, yet impossible to ignore, like a song stuck in its head that it cannot delete." Then the mind executed its counterstroke. It didn't target the weapons, it targeted the source of the noise. A single, pencil-thin beam of absolute black lanced out from the dodecahedron. It didn't travel. It simply connected 2 points in space, the mind and the central communications hub in Geneva. There was no explosion. The city of Geneva, along with a perfect cylindrical volume of Earth's crust and mantle beneath it, simply ceased to exist, replaced by a smooth, glassy, geometrically perfect crater. The silence that followed was different. It was the silence of a scream choked off. Millions gone in an instant, not destroyed but deleted. The message was clear: I will not play your game. I will erase the player. Global panic, held at bay by the frenzy of the fight, threatened to erupt. But in the bunkers and command centers, a colder reaction set in. "It's learning," Stavros said, his face pale but set. "It's learning that the source of the paradox is biological. It's moving up the chain of causation." "We have to escalate," Eris said, her voice hollow from the loss of colleagues in Geneva, "before it decides to delete a continent." "Escalate to what?" General Yi demanded. "We are throwing everything we have." "Not everything," Kalen said. All eyes turned to him. He floated forward, his frill a tight knot of distress. "You have used our science to create chaos, but you have not used yourselves. The Locus is a pattern. It sees you as a faulty pattern to be corrected. You must show it you are not a pattern at all. What does that mean, scholar? Stavros asked, his eyes narrowed. It means you must do something truly, profoundly irrational. Not a weaponized meme, not a clever paradox. An act that has no strategic value, no logical basis, that serves only to express. The human stared at him, uncomprehending. Art, Kalen said desperately, but not art made to communicate, art made for its own sake, a gesture with no purpose, a sacrifice with no gain. The idea was met with skepticism, but as the Locus mind, recovering its implacable calm, began to charge another deletion beam, this one seemingly aimed at the East Asian power grid, desperation opened minds. Aris was the one who made the connection. The Arecibo message, she breathed. Decades ago, humanity had broadcast a message from the Arecibo telescope into space. It was a pictorial representation of human DNA, our solar system, our form. A hopeful, logical hello to the cosmos. We send a new message, she said, her eyes blazing. Not from a telescope. From every speaker, every transmitter, every power line on the planet. We use the Janus arrays not to broadcast a weapon but to broadcast this. She played a file on her console. It was a cacophony. The opening chords of Beethoven's Fifth, a baby's laughter, the sound of a thunderstorm, a poet reciting a sonnet in a dead language, the sizzle of food cooking, a crowd cheering at a sports event, the wail of a funeral dirge. She layered them not harmoniously but chaotically, a crashing, overwhelming wave of raw human experience. We don't target the mind, she said. We flood the system. We fill every frequency, every quantum vibration with the sound of being alive. Not a signal, not a pattern, just noise with meaning only to us. It was insane. It was the opposite of a military action. It was a global primal scream, a cultural signature turned inside out. Stavros the soldier looked at the plan, then at the hologram of the dodecahedron now glowing with deadly purpose. He gave a short, sharp nod. Do it. Before that thing finishes its charge. Give it everything, not our weapons, our playlists. The order went out. Across a wounded, terrified planet, engineers and technicians rerouted power. The mighty Janus arrays on the moon pivoted. Satellite networks, internet backbones, radio towers, even power grids, all were jury-rigged into a planet-sized amplifier. And humanity broadcast itself. It was not a song. It was the sound of 7 billion stories happening at once. News reports overlaid on Tibetan throat singing. Stock market data mixed with Amazonian rain forest sounds. Military transmissions tangled with soap operas. The joyous, messy, tragic, boring, exhilarating, contradictory roar of a species that was, above all else, loud. The wave hit the Locus mind. The deletion beam faltered, flickered out. The dodecahedron's surface, previously reacting with defensive geometric shifts, now went utterly still. Then it began to vibrate. Not a physical vibration, but a dissonance in its very structure. The perfect black facets clouded. Strange, organic, non-geometric shapes, brief, blurry impressions of faces, forests, cities, galaxies, flashed across its surface like fever dreams. It was trying to process the unprocessable. It was trying to find the pattern in the greatest aggregation of anti-pattern ever assembled. It was trying to compile the human soul. And it was failing. Cracks appeared. Not physical cracks, but flaws in its perfect geometric logic, propagated by the relentless, meaningless meaning of the human broadcast. The dodecahedron didn't explode. It unraveled. Its coherence dissolved. The vast structure began to de-resolve, facets peeling away and dissipating into harmless dust, not from an attack, but from a fundamental inability to comprehend. In its last microsecond of existence, the Locus mind did not send a final signal of rage or defeat. It broadcast a single, pure datum, a shard of its dying consciousness, received by every sensor in the system. Error entity, solii, contradiction irreducible, conclusion not a system error, a feature, quarantine inadequate, recommendation isolation, perpetual fear. And then it was gone. Space around Jupiter returned to normal, scattered with glittering dust that had once been a god of order. Silence again, but this time it was the silence of aftermath. The human broadcast sputtered and died, the planet emotionally and technologically spent. On Earth there were no victory parades. Geneva was a silent, glassy scar. Millions were dead. The world's infrastructure was in tatters, but they were alive. In the Alpine bunker the humans sat, stunned by the silence. Stavros finally broke it. What was that last transmission? Fear. Kalen translated the concepts. It is more than fear, it is a primal directive. The Locus did not see you as enemies, it saw you as a fault in reality. Its final act was to update the galactic record. You are not to be fought, you are to be avoided. Aris let out a shaky laugh. So were the monsters under the bed, the thing that goes bump in the universe. You are the paradox that cannot be solved, Kalen said, looking at them, these fragile, brutal, brilliant apes. The Ethel sought to join the galactic chorus. You have made the chorus afraid to sing, lest it attract your attention. Weeks later, the Whisper of Dawn prepared to leave. The Ethel could not stay. Their presence was a lightning rod, and humanity needed to rebuild in its own, messy image. A small delegation of humans, including Aris and Stavros, saw them off at a patched-together orbital dock. You saved us, scholar, Aris said. Your knowledge, your warning. No, Kalen said, his frill expressing a complex sorrow. We gave you a new kind of fire. You showed us and the galaxy what you do with fire. You do not just cook food or warm homes. You forge weapons, yes, but you also make fireworks. You create light shows that serve no purpose but beauty and wonder. You are the keepers of chaos. It is your curse and your supreme art. Stavros offered a data crystal, the schematics for the Janus upgrades, and a cultural database, music, literature, art, the good stuff. Kalen took it. We will study it, and we will warn any we meet about the quiet, yellow star on the Orion spur, not because it holds monsters, but because it holds the problem. As the Whisper of Dawn slipped into the shimmer of its jump drive, Kalen took one last look at the vibrant, wounded, noisy marble of Earth. The quarantine was over, not because humanity had become peaceful, but because the galaxy had learned a more profound truth. Some species cannot be controlled, cannot be reasoned with, and cannot be defeated. They can only be given a very, very wide berth. Humanity was alone again, but this time their solitude was not due to ignorance. It was by decree. They were the solution that broke the problem, the answer that refused the question. They were and forever would be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because of their weapons, but because of their noise.